The sleek research vessel, Celestial Inquiry, drifted silently through Earth's orbit, its polished hull reflecting the blue-green planet below. Inside the observation deck, Dr. Kim adjusted his sensory appendages as he studied the data streaming across his console. "Impossible," he muttered, his scaled skin shifting from deep blue to a troubled purple. "Run the analysis again." The third analysis produced identical results. Dr. Kim had spent 15 galactic cycles studying evolutionary patterns across hundreds of worlds, but human physiology defied everything he understood about successful species development. "Bonuringer, Park needs to see this immediately," he decided. 3 hours later, the 7 members of the Coalition's First Contact Assessment Team gathered around the conference table. Director Park's attention focused on the holographic display showing human biological readings. "So you're telling me these humans are inefficient by design?" Director Park's voice carried the distinct harmonic undertones of his Vespian heritage. Dr. Kim gestured toward the display. "Every spacefaring species we've encountered evolved through specialization. The Ardani developed enhanced cerebral structures for computational thinking. We Vespians evolved our atmospheric adaptation sacs. The Toral have their reinforced skeletal systems for high-gravity environments." He pulled up comparative anatomical models. "But humans, they're generalists. They're not particularly strong, fast, or sensory advanced. Their bones break easily. Their skin tears. They require frequent rest cycles. They're vulnerable to temperature fluctuations, radiation, atmospheric pressure changes. Yet they've achieved spaceflight and quantum computing," noted Science Officer Jun. "Something doesn't add up." Dr. Kim nodded. "That's the anomaly. They possess moderate capabilities across countless domains instead of excellence in any single area. It contradicts evolutionary efficiency principles." Researcher Yoon, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "What if we're measuring the wrong kind of efficiency?" The room turned toward her. "Consider this," she continued, indicating the human biological model. "Most species evolve to perfectly fit their environmental niche. But what if humans evolved in an environment where the niche itself was constantly changing? Earth's geological records appeared on screen. Ice ages, rapid warming periods, continental drift, dramatic atmospheric composition shifts. No other intelligent species developed on a planet with such environmental volatility," Dr. Kim realized, his scales shifting to the bright yellow of scientific excitement. Director Park appeared unconvinced. "Theory aside, the Coalition needs practical assessment. We should observe these humans directly before recommending full diplomatic integration." 2 weeks later, Professor Lee led the first official contact team to Earth's United Nations headquarters. Despite extensive briefing, nothing prepared them for actual human interaction. "I don't understand," whispered Medical Officer Hyun to Professor Lee during the welcome reception. "That human delegate was injured during our arrival. I saw the blood when she scraped her hand on the transport door. Yet she continues functioning normally, even declining medical assistance." Professor Lee observed the human in question, who was animatedly discussing trade policies while casually holding a cloth against her bleeding palm. "Their pain response is different," Professor Lee replied. "They acknowledge it, but often choose to override it." Throughout the 3-day diplomatic summit, the Coalition team documented dozens of similar observations. A human security officer standing motionless for hours, despite obvious discomfort. Diplomats functioning coherently after minimal sleep. And elderly human negotiator continuing complex discussions despite what sensors indicated was a painful inflammatory condition. Maintenance worker lifting equipment weighing nearly half his body mass. Most perplexing were the recreational activities humans pursued willingly, running until exhaustion, deliberately exposing themselves to temperature extremes for refreshment, consuming substances that triggered pain receptors for flavor enjoyment. On the final evening, Professor Lee witnessed something that crystallized Dr. Kim's theory. During the farewell banquet, a human chef sustained a minor burn while preparing a ceremonial dish. Instead of withdrawing or seeking immediate treatment, the human ran cold water over the injury, applied a simple protective covering, and returned to work within minutes. Later, Professor Lee found the chef outside taking a break. "Your injury? Does it not impair your function?" he asked carefully. The chef laughed. "This little thing had worse cooking Sunday dinner last week. Besides, the show must go on, right? You willingly endure discomfort to complete non-survival tasks," Professor Lee observed. The chef considered this with amusement. "I suppose that's one way to put it. Life's full of bumps and bruises. You adapt and keep moving." Back aboard the Celestial Inquiry, Professor Lee compiled the observation reports for Dr. Kim. "They're not merely tolerating adverse conditions," he explained during the debriefing. "They expect them. Their entire psychological framework anticipates obstacles and physical limitations." Dr. Kim's scales rippled with excitement. "A species evolved not for specialization but for adaptation itself. The Coalition has never encountered this evolutionary strategy before." Director Park remained practical. "Interesting theory, but we need empirical data. How do these adaptability traits perform under controlled conditions?" "The interspecies physical trials begin next month," suggested researcher Yoon. "Perhaps we should extend an invitation to Earth." Director Park considered this briefly before nodding. "Make the arrangements. If these humans are truly built differently, let's see how they perform against the specialized capabilities of the Coalition's finest." As the research vessel broke orbit, Dr. Kim couldn't help feeling that the humans watching from below represented something unprecedented in galactic evolution. Not the specialized perfection the Coalition had always valued, but something perhaps more valuable. The messy, inefficient, remarkably resilient ability to endure, adapt, and overcome. The enormous docking bay of Celestial Station hummed with activity as the Earth shuttle made its final approach. Massive hangar doors parted to welcome the first human delegation to the interspecies physical trials, an event celebrated across 27 solar systems. Dr. Kang watched from the observation deck, her scaled fingers tapping nervously against the railing. As the Coalition's leading expert on comparative physiology, she had fought hard for human inclusion in the trials despite significant opposition. "They don't stand a chance," her colleague had argued during the selection committee meeting. "Why waste resources evaluating a species that will fail every specialized test?" But Dr. Kang had insisted. Something about Dr. Kim's preliminary reports from Earth suggested humans possessed qualities worth studying, even if those qualities didn't align with traditional measures of evolutionary success. The shuttle doors opened, and the human team emerged, 12 individuals of varying heights, builds, and skin tones, looking around with expressions of wonder and determination. Dr. Kang immediately noticed their inefficient gait, their exposed skin, their obvious respiratory requirements. By Coalition standards, they appeared remarkably vulnerable. "Welcome to Celestial Station," announced Chief Administrator Han through the translation system. "The 57th Interspecies Physical Trials begin tomorrow. Your accommodations have been prepared with Earth-standard atmosphere and gravity." The human team captain, a stocky woman named Jin, stepped forward. "We're honored to participate. We've trained hard for this opportunity." Dr. Kang couldn't help but wonder what training hard meant to a species whose biology seemed so inflexible compared to the other competitors. The first day of competition confirmed her worst fears. In the high-gravity strength trials, the humans placed last, managing only a fraction of the weight lifted by the massive Toral competitors. In the sensory differentiation tests, they missed subtle gas compositions that the Ardani detected instantly. During the vacuum adaptation challenge, humans required full protective suits while two competing species needed only minimal breathing assistance. "As expected," muttered Dr. Kang's assistant as they recorded the results. "They're simply not specialized enough for any single challenge." Yet something curious happened during the afternoon endurance trials. The course required competitors to maintain physical exertion across changing environments, shifting from underwater segments to high-temperature zones to low-oxygen sections. The specialized species excelled in their preferred environments but struggled elsewhere. The amphibious merlins dominated the underwater portion but faltered in the heat. The desert-evolved Tsunari moved easily through high temperatures but slowed dramatically underwater. The humans, however, kept a steady pace throughout. They weren't particularly fast in any segment, but unlike the other competitors, their performance didn't dramatically decline across different environments. Interesting, Dr. Kang noted, reviewing the telemetry. Their vital signs show stress in each zone, but they're maintaining functional output across all environments. On the second day, the pattern continued. During the problem-solving trials, humans placed mid-pack, showing neither the computational brilliance of the Ardani nor the spatial reasoning limitations of the Toral. In reflex testing, they weren't as quick as the predator species but faster than most herbivorous competitors. By the third day, Dr. Kang's research team had noticed something remarkable. Of all 22 competing species, humans were the only ones able to participate in every single event. Even more surprising, they consistently placed in the middle range across all categories. "It's unprecedented," she told researcher Yoon during their evening analysis. "Most species have clear strengths and weaknesses. They excel in challenges, matching their evolutionary specialties, and perform poorly elsewhere. The humans show no spectacular abilities, but they have no catastrophic weaknesses either." On the fourth day came the most revealing test of all, the Adaptive Response Challenge. Competitors faced a course where conditions changed without warning. Gravity increased or decreased, temperature fluctuated, lighting shifted, obstacles appeared randomly. The specialized species struggled with the unpredictability. Several competitors withdrew after finding themselves in environments they simply couldn't function in. Others pushed forward, but made dangerous mistakes. The human team, however, seemed to thrive on the chaos. They adjusted their approach with each environmental shift, communicating constantly, switching team positions based on individual strengths. When one human struggled with sudden high gravity, another took over their role. When visibility dropped, they formed a chain to stay connected. They finished third overall, their highest placement in any event. That evening, Dr. Kang found Jin and her team celebrating in the station's common area. "You performed unexpectedly well today," Dr. Kang said, joining them. Jin smiled. "We're used to things going wrong. That's basically what we train for back home." "You train for failure?" Dr. Kang asked, confused. "We train for adaptation," Jin corrected. "On Earth, plans rarely survive contact with reality. Weather changes, equipment breaks, people get hurt. The best human performers aren't the strongest or fastest. They're the ones who can adjust when things go sideways." The final day featured the Team Survival Challenge. Competitors were placed in a simulated mining colony experiencing cascading systems failures. Success required navigating through multiple problems simultaneously: structural damage, atmospheric contamination, power fluctuations, and medical emergencies. The human team moved through the simulation with remarkable efficiency, while other species hesitated when faced with conditions outside their comfort zones. The humans divided tasks based on immediate needs rather than specialized abilities. They made quick decisions, changed tactics when initial approaches failed, and continuously reassessed priorities. When the dust settled, humans had placed fifth overall, a shocking result that sent ripples through the coalition scientific community. "We need to reconsider our definition of evolutionary success," Dr. Kang announced at the post-trial scientific conference. She displayed the comprehensive performance data. The human results reveal something profound. While they excel at nothing, they can adequately perform almost anything. Their evolutionary advantage isn't specialization, it's versatility itself. As the human team prepared for departure, researcher Yoon approached Jin with a final question. "Your species' performance has challenged our understanding of biological efficiency," she said. "How would you explain humanity's approach to challenges?" Jin thought for a moment. "We're built to endure and adapt. We're not the best at anything, but we can handle almost everything. When the environment changes, and it always does, specialists struggle while generalists survive." Dr. Kang watched the Earth shuttle depart with a new appreciation for human capabilities. The trials had begun as a scientific curiosity, but ended with a profound question: What if the ultimate evolutionary advantage wasn't perfect adaptation to current conditions, but the ability to adapt to whatever comes next? Little did anyone realize how soon this theory would be tested, and how desperately the Coalition would come to value this peculiar human trait. The celebration banquet marking the conclusion of the interspecies physical trials filled Celestial Station's grand hall with laughter, music, and the mingled scents of 22 worlds' cuisine. Overhead lighting pulsed with gentle colors, complementing the mood of accomplishment that permeated the room. Jin and her human teammates had surprised everyone with their fifth-place finish, earning them respect if not exactly awe from the assembled Coalition species. They mingled comfortably now, exchanging stories with competitors who had initially dismissed them as biological curiosities. "Your approach to the adaptive challenge was unorthodox," commented a towering Toral representative, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the lights. "Most fascinating," Jin smiled. "We call it winging it back home." Across the room, Dr. Kim observed the humans with renewed interest while chatting with Station Security Chief Officer Song. "They're more resilient than we anticipated," Dr. Kim admitted. Their performance in the changing environment's challenge was particularly. A deep, resonant tremor cut through the conversation, subtle at first but quickly intensifying. Glasses vibrated off tables. Decorative elements swayed ominously. Then came darkness, followed seconds later by the dull red glow of emergency lighting. The station's AI voice echoed through the suddenly silent hall. "Emergency protocols activated. Reactor anomaly detected in Sector 7. All personnel implement safety procedures immediately." Security Chief Song was already moving, tapping her communication implant. "Status report." The news arrived in fragments. A catastrophic coolant failure had triggered a cascade effect in the station's primary reactor. Radiation was already leaking into surrounding sections. Environmental systems across multiple sectors were failing. Evacuation. "Pods are being prepared," Song announced to the increasingly panicked crowd. "Priority will be given to—" Another, more violent tremor rocked the station. Overhead, a support beam fractured, sending debris crashing onto the buffet tables below. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone expected. Dr. Kang rushed to Officer Song's side. "The radiation levels in Sector 7 are already beyond safe exposure thresholds for most species, and the emergency teams can't reach the manual override controls through the damaged corridors." "What about the auxiliary control room?" asked Song. "Inaccessible. The connecting passage collapsed in that last structural failure." Jin had worked her way through the crowd to join them. "We couldn't help overhearing. What's the situation?" Officer Song hesitated only briefly before explaining the dire circumstances. The reactor's automatic containment systems had malfunctioned. Without manual intervention, a catastrophic breach would occur within hours, potentially destroying the entire station. But the radiation levels and structural damage made it impossible for their specialized emergency teams to reach the critical systems. "Our disaster response units are highly trained but evolved for specific emergency conditions," Dr. Kang explained. "The Ardani responders can handle the radiation but can't navigate the physical obstacles. The Toral team could clear the debris but would be incapacitated by the radiation within minutes." Jin exchanged glances with her teammates, who had gathered around her. "What about us?" "Absolutely not," Officer Song replied immediately. "Your species has among the lowest radiation tolerance of any attending the trials. You'd receive lethal exposure before reaching the override controls." "Lethal eventually, or lethal immediately?" asked Day, the human team's medical specialist. The bluntness of the question caught the Coalition officials off guard. "Your cellular structure would begin degrading immediately," Dr. Kang explained reluctantly. "But complete system failure would take approximately 30 minutes at current radiation levels." Jin nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. We can work with that." "Work with?" "No." Dr. Kang's scales flushed a deep purple of alarm. "You misunderstand. Exposure would cause irreversible damage. Even if you somehow reached the controls, you would die. Everyone on this station will die if someone doesn't reach those controls. Jin replied calmly. We've seen the station schematics during orientation. We know the route. Before the coalition officials could protest further, the human team had already begun organizing themselves. They raided emergency supply lockers, improvising additional radiation protection by layering emergency blankets and coolant wraps over their bodies. This is suicide, Officer Song insisted. It's a calculated risk, corrected Min, the team strategist. We've trained for high radiation scenarios on Earth. We know exactly what we're facing. Dr. Kim watched in disbelief as the humans discussed their approach, dividing responsibilities based on individual strengths rather than sending only their most physically robust members. We'll go in rotating teams of 3, Jin explained. Each team gets 5 minutes maximum exposure, then retreats while the next team advances. We'll tag team our way to the control room. Officer Song provided emergency communicators and whatever protective gear could be spared. Within 15 minutes, the first human team was entering the damaged section. In the emergency command center, Dr. Kang monitored their life signs with growing concern. The radiation immediately began affecting their bodies, elevated heart rates, spiking temperature, cellular damage accumulating rapidly. First team pulling back, Jin's voice crackled over the comm. We've cleared the initial debris field. Second, team moving forward. The station's remaining occupants gathered around monitoring screens, watching in stunned silence as the humans methodically advanced toward the reactor control room. When one human stumbled from radiation sickness, another stepped in without hesitation. When falling debris blocked their route, they found alternative paths. They shouldn't be able to function at these exposure levels, whispered Dr. Kang, watching their deteriorating biological readings. By our understanding, they should be incapacitated by now. They're pushing through the pain, Dr. Kim replied softly, overriding their body's warnings. When the final human team reached the control room, their vital signs were alarming, dangerously. Elevated core temperatures, erratic heart rates, consciousness clearly fading, yet they methodically worked through the override sequence, restoring containment protocols one system at a time. Containment restored, announced the station AI. Radiation levels stabilizing. In the aftermath, coalition medical teams rushed to treat the humans who were all suffering severe radiation poisoning. Using advanced medical technology, they managed to counteract the worst effects, though recovery would take months. 3 days later, Dr. Kim sat beside Jin's recovery pod, recording her observations. You knew the radiation would cause devastating damage, Dr. Kim said. Yet you went anyway. Why? Jin's voice was weak but clear. Because we could. Because we've evolved understanding our own fragility. I don't understand. Most species here evolved to prevent damage. Tough exoskeletons, redundant organs, specialized adaptations. Humans evolved knowing we break easily. We've always been vulnerable. So instead of evolving to prevent damage, we evolved to function despite it. Dr. Kim's scales shifted to the blue of deep thought. You're saying your evolutionary advantage is not avoiding harm, but continuing to function while harmed? Jin nodded, slowly. Exactly. We call it playing hurt. Every human understands you sometimes have to keep going when your body is screaming to stop. It's not special to us. It's just human. As Dr. Kim completed her notes that evening, she added a personal observation. The Coalition has long valued biological specialization and efficiency. Today we witnessed something different. A species whose greatest strength may be their capacity to endure what should, by all biological logic, incapacitate them. They don't just survive despite vulnerability. In some ways, they seem to have evolved because of it. The soft glow of holographic data illuminated Dr. Kim's face as she paced the length of the medical research lab. 6 weeks had passed since the reactor crisis, and the human delegation had finally been cleared to return home. Their departure left behind a mystery that consumed her waking hours. Play the recovery footage again, she instructed the lab system. The display shifted to show Jin during her 3rd week of treatment. Despite severe radiation damage to multiple organs, she was sitting up in bed laughing with her teammates. Medical. Scanners showed her body actively rebuilding damaged tissue at rates that defied coalition medical models. Dr. Kim paused the footage. How? By every measure we have, humans are physiologically unremarkable. Average strength, average sensory capacity, average neural processing. Yet they survived radiation levels that should have been instantly debilitating. Her research assistant, a junior scientist named Tae, looked up from his own data analysis. Perhaps we're measuring the wrong attributes? Dr. Kim had been considering the same possibility. The Standard Coalition taxonomic system classified species according to their specialized adaptations: respiratory efficiency, strength-to-mass ratio, sensory acuity, neural processing speed. Humans ranked firmly in the middle on nearly every metric. I have a hypothesis, she said slowly, but it challenges fundamental principles of evolutionary biology as understood by the Coalition. 3 days later, Dr. Kim stood before the Coalition's Science Directorate, the most distinguished evolutionary biologists and xenophysiologists from 27 member worlds. Director Park sat at the center, his scaled crest raised with interest. Distinguished colleagues, Dr. Kim began, I present today a new framework for understanding human evolutionary development, one that may require us to reconsider our basic assumptions about successful adaptation. The holographic display behind her showed Earth's geological record, a chaotic history of ice ages, rapid warming periods, continental drift, atmospheric composition shifts, and mass extinction events. Every sapient coalition species evolved on worlds with relatively stable environmental conditions, she explained. The Vespian homeworld has maintained consistent atmospheric composition for over 30 million years. Toral Prime has experienced minimal geological activity for 15 million years. Even the Ardani, with their complex adaptation to light spectrum shifts, evolved on a world where those shifts follow predictable, cyclical patterns. She highlighted Earth's unpredictable climate oscillations. Humans, by contrast, evolved on a planet in constant flux. Their ancestors faced radical environmental changes within single lifetimes, not over evolutionary timescales. A ripple of conversation moved through the audience. This explains why humans developed as extreme generalists rather than specialists, Dr. Kim continued. In an environment where conditions might dramatically change within a generation, specialization becomes a liability, not an advantage. Professor Han, the Coalition's leading expert on evolutionary mechanics, raised a hand.
An interesting hypothesis, but it doesn't explain the remarkable human performance during the reactor crisis. Environmental adaptability doesn't account for radiation resistance. That's where my theory extends beyond conventional adaptation.
Models, Dr. Kim replied. She brought up comparative physiology scans. Humans possess what appear to be evolutionary inefficiencies, multiple overlapping biological systems, seemingly redundant neural pathways, excess capacity in most organs. By coalition standards, these redundancies represent wasted energy and resources. She highlighted specific examples. Humans can lose significant blood volume, yet remain conscious. They can function with one lung, one kidney, partial liver. Their neural pathways can reroute around damaged areas. Their immune systems can adapt to novel pathogens during a single lifetime. Dr. Kang, who had been observing the presentation silently, leaned forward. You're suggesting these aren't inefficiencies at all? Exactly, Dr. Kim replied. What we perceived as evolutionary wastefulness is actually sophisticated damage mitigation. Humans didn't evolve to prevent damage. They evolved to function despite it. She played footage from the reactor crisis. Humans continuing to perform complex tasks while experiencing radiation sickness that would have immediately incapacitated most coalition species. Their pain response is particularly telling, she noted. Pain in most species produces immediate cessation of the harmful activity. Human pain is more advisory. This prompted uncomfortable laughter from several attendees. Moreover, she continued, humans exhibit unique psychological adaptations to complement their physiological resilience. They demonstrate remarkable tolerance for discomfort, an ability to compartmentalize suffering, and perhaps most importantly, an expectation that conditions will change. She displayed brain scans from the human team during various trial events. Notice the neurochemical response when faced with unexpected obstacles. Where other species show stress responses indicating threat, humans show activation patterns consistent with problem-solving and even, remarkably, pleasure. They enjoy unpredictability? Asked a skeptical voice from the audience. Not precisely, Dr. Kim clarified, but they've evolved to respond to it constructively rather than with paralysis. They expect things to go wrong and have developed both physiological and psychological mechanisms to continue functioning when they do. Professor Han looked troubled. If your theory is correct, it challenges our entire understanding of evolutionary efficiency. It suggests multiple valid evolutionary paths, Dr. Kim agreed. The specialization path most coalition species followed optimizes performance under stable conditions. The human path optimizes survivability under changing conditions. She brought up one final image, Earth's history of natural disasters alongside human population growth. Perhaps most remarkable is how humans respond collectively to crisis. When facing earthquakes, floods, disease outbreaks, or other catastrophes, human society doesn't simply survive. It often emerges stronger, with new adaptations and innovations. The presentation concluded with data from the reactor incident, the methodical way the human team had approached an impossible situation, rotating exposure times, adapting to deteriorating conditions, continuing to function even as their bodies failed. In conclusion, Dr. Kim said, I propose a new taxonomic classification for humans, adaptive resilience species. Their evolutionary advantage isn't specialization for current conditions, but adaptability to changing ones. What we previously viewed as evolutionary mediocrity, their middle-range performance across all metrics, actually represents unprecedented versatility. The science directorate chamber remained silent for several moments after she finished. Then Director Park spoke. Dr. Kim, are you suggesting that humans, a species with objectively unremarkable physical and sensory capabilities, may actually represent a more advanced evolutionary approach than our own? Dr. Kim considered her response carefully. Not more advanced, Director. Simply different. Coalition species evolved for mastery of specific environments. Humans evolved for surviving unpredictability itself. Neither approach is superior in absolute. Almost, but in a universe where conditions can change without warning. She didn't need to finish the thought. The reactor crisis had demonstrated the value of human adaptability all too clearly. As the directorate members filed out, discussing the implications of her theory, Dr. Kim found herself staring at the final image in her presentation. A simple, human handprint beside the paw print of an Earth predator, 5 flexible digits instead of specialized claws, she murmured. Not the best tool for any single task, but capable of performing almost any task adequately. Perhaps that's the essence of humanity. Not excellence, but endless adaptability. 1. Year after Dr. Kim's groundbreaking presentation, the massive amphitheater of the Coalition Central Assembly hummed with anticipation. Representatives from all 27 member worlds gathered for what many considered a historic occasion, the formal recognition of humanity's unique taxonomic classification and the signing of the Comprehensive Integration Treaty. Jin stood at the edge of the human delegation, still occasionally troubled by lingering effects from the radiation exposure. The medical team had warned her some cellular damage would never fully heal. A small price, she thought, watching the assembled species who would have perished had the reactor breach occurred. Nervous? Asked Day, noticing her distant expression. Just taking it all in, she replied. A year ago, they were studying us like curious specimens. Now they're rewriting their biology textbooks because of us. The Coalition High Chancellor, an imposing Ardani with iridescent skin that shifted colors with his emotional state, approached the central podium. The amphitheater fell silent. Today, we formally recognize humanity as the first documented adaptive, resilient species, he announced, his skin pulsing with ceremonial blue patterns. This new classification acknowledges an evolutionary pathway previously unrecognized in coalition biological science. Jin watched Dr. Kim seated among the Science Directorate members, her scales a proud shade of gold. The xenobiologist had become something of a celebrity in coalition scientific circles, her theory of human evolutionary development sparking fierce debate across multiple disciplines. The human capacity for adaptation and functional resilience represents not merely a biological curiosity, but a valuable complementary approach to the specialized evolution path followed by coalition species. The Chancellor continued. Today, we celebrate not just a new scientific understanding, but the practical benefits this partnership has already yielded. The display behind him showed images from the past year, human engineers working alongside Toral construction specialists on a deep space habitat, human medical researchers collaborating with Vespian biochemists on adaptive pharmaceutical compounds, human crisis response teams deployed to a Merlin colony world devastated by unexpected seismic activity. In just 12 standard cycles, human integration into coalition operations has reduced critical failure incidents by 23%, the Chancellor noted. Their unique perspective has identified overlooked vulnerabilities in systems designed by specialist thinking. Jin remembered the first joint mission she'd participated in 3 months after recovering, a rescue operation to a mining outpost on a volatile moon. The coalition specialists had arrived with perfect equipment for the expected conditions, only to find the situation had deteriorated beyond their predictive models. The human team had immediately begun improvising alternatives using available materials, creating workable solutions with suboptimal resources, a skill that had initially mystified their coalition counterparts. The Chancellor continued his address. Perhaps most significant has been the human contribution to our emergency response protocols. As demonstrated during last month's asteroid deflection mission, the ability to continue functioning under suboptimal conditions can mean the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Jin's teammate Min had been on that mission. When the primary deflection system malfunctioned, the specialized coalition engineers had become fixated on restoring the optimal system, a process that would have taken too long. Min and his human colleagues had instead quickly repurposed secondary systems to create a less elegant but functional solution, successfully altering the asteroid's trajectory with minutes to spare. Before we proceed with the treaty signing, the Chancellor announced, Dr. Kim, who first identified the unique evolutionary pathway of humanity, will present the findings of the year-long integration study. Dr. Kim approached the podium, her movements confident but respectful. Distinguished representatives, when I first encountered humans, I considered their biology unremarkable. Average strength, average sensory capability, average neural processing speed. By every specialized measure, they appeared distinctly mediocre. This prompted knowing laughter from the assembly. My error was evaluating them according to specialized criteria, she continued. It's like judging a multi-tool against specialized instruments. A surgical scalpel will always make a cleaner incision. A dedicated screwdriver will always turn screws more efficiently. But when conditions change unexpectedly, the multi-tool's versatility becomes its greatest strength. She highlighted comparative performance data from various joint missions. Coalition specialists consistently outperform humans in stable, predicted conditions. But as conditions deviate from expected parameters, human performance remains consistent, while specialist performance often degrades sharply. The display showed a simple graph with performance plotted against environmental stability. Specialist species showed high peaks in their adapted conditions, but steep drop-offs elsewhere. The human line remained relatively flat across all conditions, never reaching the highest peaks but never dropping to critical failure points either. What we've discovered about humans extends beyond their obvious physical resilience, Dr. Kim explained. Their neural and psychological adaptability may be even more significant. Humans possess an unusual relationship with stress and difficulty. They often respond to adversity by becoming more focused, more innovative. She showed brain scans of humans during crisis simulations. Note the activation patterns when faced with unexpected obstacles. Where most species show heightened stress responses that can inhibit higher reasoning, humans often show patterns suggesting engagement and problem-solving activation. Jin smiled, remembering how her team had described their approach during the reactor crisis. We don't panic until after the job is done. Their coalition colleagues had found this concept nearly incomprehensible. Perhaps most valuable is the human capacity for what they call improvisation, the ability to recombine existing knowledge and resources to create novel solutions, Dr. Kim continued. This cognitive flexibility complements the more structured, optimization-focused thinking common among coalition specialists. As Dr. Kim concluded her presentation, Jin felt a swell of pride, not just for humanity's recognition, but for the genuine partnership that had developed. The coalition wasn't merely tolerating humans as curiosities, they were recognizing the genuine value of a different evolutionary approach. The treaty signing proceeded with appropriate ceremony, officially classifying Earth as a full coalition member world and establishing exchange programs for human integration across all major coalition operations. Later, at the reception, Jin found herself speaking with Assistant Director Song, who had been promoted after the reactor incident. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," Song said. "When you volunteered during the crisis, you knew the radiation would cause permanent damage. You knew some of you might die, yet you acted without hesitation. How do humans make such calculations?" Jin considered the question. "We don't see it as calculation, we see it as necessity. Throughout our history, survival has often required sacrifice and harm. We've evolved expecting that reality. But to willingly accept damage," Song's expression showed she still struggled with the concept. "Maybe that's the fundamental difference," Jin suggested. Coalition species evolved to optimize performance through specialization and damage prevention. Humans evolved to endure damage and continue functioning anyway. We don't excel at avoiding problems, we excel at surviving them. As the celebration continued around them, Jin watched the diverse coalition species interacting with her human colleagues with new respect and understanding. The universe was vast and unpredictable, filled with challenges no single evolutionary approach could perfectly address. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson of humanity's recognition, that excellence comes in many forms, and sometimes the most valuable trait isn't specialized perfection, but the simple, stubborn ability to adapt and endure no matter what comes next.